The Modi government is planning a massive evacuation exercise for Indians stranded in the Gulf. Now, in this episode of Government Matters, which we are bringing to you live, we'll try and understand what this plan is, what stage the plan is in, and when the government plans to evacuate these Indians. With me, I have Snehesh Alex Philip, who did a story on this yesterday. In fact, you can log on to our website, theprint.in, to read the story. He, of course, tracks defense for The Print. Snehesh, you'll also, of course, answer questions from our viewers who will send it in the course of the conversation. But just to set the ball rolling, what is this exercise being planned and how many Indians are stuck in the Gulf?
Well, remember that it's a Gulf where a large number of the Indians are working, and this includes mostly the blue-collar jobs.
Right.
So, as per an estimate, there are about nearly 1 million of Indians working in this Gulf region. Now, what has happened is that because of the coronavirus,
right,
a large number of people have lost their jobs, and many of them have actually run out of their work visa. So, to work in a particular country, you need a work visa, which is for a limited period. Now, because of this, because of the lockdown that is there,
right,
they have not been able to leave those countries. So they are stuck there. So a number of states, especially Kerala government, had raised this issue. Based on which now there is a consultation that is going on in the center, along with the states. Various departments are involved in this. This is largely driven by the Ministry of External Affairs, but the defense also plays a large role in it.
So who's going to carry out the evacuation?
So as I said earlier, nothing has been finalized as yet, but as per the evacuation plan, a number of assets would be deployed, and these assets also include the Navy, with its ships, the Air Force with their, the transport fleet. Besides that, the Air India would also be roped in. Now there are some more assets that would be deployed. Confirmation of which is yet to come in. So we've not mentioned that. But as I said, this is going to be one of the biggest evacuation exercise being carried out by India in the recent past.
I know you said that it's still in the planning stage and it's still being discussed and there is no concrete plan as yet, but when is the government hoping to carry this exercise out?
Well, I spoke to a number of people, and what we've been told is that there would be no evacuation before May 3rd.
Which is when this phase of the lockdown is due to end.
When this phase of lockdown is due to end. But it also doesn't mean that it will start immediately after the 3rd.
Right.
But remember that, as I mentioned in the story yesterday, this evacuation will be phased wise. It would be in phases. So it's not that the entire set of people who are there
at one go can be brought,
and the number could actually be in thousands, would be evacuated in one go. So there would be, and the different assets are being used for different purpose. So accordingly, the evacuation will happen.
Right. Well, I have a viewer question from Tarush. Will Indians, especially who can pay for the flight? So essentially, will it be an evacuation exercise entirely sponsored by the government of India, or will there be
as I said, the nuances of this evacuation plan is still being worked out. So one of the issues that is under consideration is who will actually pay for this evacuation, for this exercise. So it's a decision on it has yet not been taken. So there is an ongoing consultation between the state governments, the Ministry of External Affairs, the Defense, the Civil Aviation, and of course the PMO.
Various stakeholders.
Yeah.
So, but recently Prime Minister Modi had said and had assured Indians who were stranded across various countries, and it said that just remain where you are for now, and had hinted that there is no evacuation that the government is planning. What is this change of heart?
See, you'll have to understand that when Prime Minister Narendra Modi mentioned this, there were two things. There are two issues to be understood. One was that there was a lockdown anyway, so there is no there is no aircraft that has been so there's no aircraft that is flying in the air, except for in emergency case where other countries are evacuating their citizens from India. The other one is that there needs so that particular direction was directed at those people who wanted to leave the country out of the fear of coronavirus. But the evacuation is for those people, as I mentioned earlier, for those people, one, who've lost their jobs and have no jobs in in the Gulf countries, and second, of whose work permits have actually got expired. So they come and they are Indian citizens, and they're the responsibility of the Indian government, and hence their evacuation has been done. So
but
it's
the
not
work permit issue is being handled at a diplomatic level as well, right? I mean, it is a situation where everybody's work permits or visas would have to be extended.
Well, see, as I said, there are a lot of cases. Now the embassies are actually making a list. So the embassies in the regions, that be it in Saudi, be it in UAE, be it in Kuwait, Qatar, so they are making, actually they have reached out to the Indian diaspora. They're making a list of people who are seeking to come back, and as I mentioned earlier, this would be done in phased wise. So it's not. So the priority would be the first ones whose work permits have expired, who've lost their jobs. Naturally, they would want to come back to India. In many of these places, the housing is also dependent on the jobs that you have. So you end up getting a work, let's say in Qatar. The particular office would be offering you the housing for the same. But if you don't have a job, so which means that you will not have any housing also. So it would be done in phased-wise manner, but and the priority would be given to the those with emergency issues.
Right. There is a question from Dhruv Raj Singh Rawat. The question is, can India buy a cruise liner and evacuate its citizens?
Well, Rawat, that's a good question that you asked, whether India can buy a cruise liner to evacuate. Well, at this currently, the focus is not on luxury. The focus is on evacuating the people in the quickest manner possible. So you will have, remember that even when the ships have been deployed, the Indian Navy currently is preparing 3 of its ships, but which can take a lot of personnel on board. But remember that there would be social distancing that will have to be maintained on board these ships also, and plus the aircraft also, there would be social distancing that would be maintained. So yes, the answer, of course, India can buy a cruise liner, and India can operate. I
don't think that's the path they're going to choose to take.
That is not the path that has been taken.
Ishwar Patil wants to know, is the government planning to send naval ships in case of huge number of citizens planning to return?
Well, as I said, the Navy is already prepping 3 of its big ships that can actually accommodate a large number of personnel. Now, these are traditionally ships which are used for amphibious operations. So when amphibious operation means when you carry personnel over water. So you land at a particular, let's say in an island, so you come in with all your vehicles with the personnel. So these are ships especially meant for that, and those are the ships that have been that would be used. There are more number of ships that are there at the disposal of the Navy, but as of now 3 Indian Navy vessels are being prepped for the possibility of such an operation. Remember that decisions have not been taken completely. The nuances, the schematics of the entire operation is still being worked out. So there would be the air element, the sea element, as well as the civil aviation element too.
Ishwar Patil, is the government, sorry, I've already taken that question. Hussain Zafar, the next question is from, will the Middle Eastern countries help India given the political narrative here?
Well, Hussain, that was a name.
Hussain.
Well, Mr. Hussain, the fact is that the political narrative has not changed at all. There are, of course, there have been some concerns that have been mentioned, but most of the countries have actually come forward and issued statements in support of the fight against coronavirus. Now, every single country at this particular point of time is trying to help each other out, and I'm sure that no Gulf country wants to have so many Indians on its soil when there are no jobs and their work permits are over.
Right. No, also this is an exceptional situation, so really even uncomfortable diplomatic situations would take a back seat at this point when it comes to handling.
If at all there is one. Yeah.
If at all there are any. Dheeraj Reddy, what criteria has been used to decide the initial groups to be evacuated? Is it people with visa issues or high-risk groups, Indians that are largely migrant workers who are young and healthy? So, Snesh, I know you did mention that people whose work permits are over and who lost their jobs is a concern, and that is a priority. But there is also something to be said about vulnerable groups, which is, say, people who are 60 plus or people with comorbidities. Is there that kind of decision making also that is happening?
Well, See, right now it's the evacuation which is focusing on the large number of the blue collar, especially the blue collar
Right.
people in the blue collar jobs. So the evacuation, the entire process is for that, and that has been the demand of state governments. As I mentioned earlier, Kerala has been really pushing for it. So that is the focus as of now. But eventually the evacuation, say in the past also, before the lockdown happened, India did go ahead and evacuate its citizens from Wuhan, from
right.
Italy, from Iran. Those evacuation have happened. Once the lockdown clears up, and once the airspace opens up, you can actually book your own ticket and come down to India.
Right. Abhijit wants to know, how will social distancing be maintained in ships? Diamond Princess experience taught us it's not possible. So is that a concern about
Well, of course, that is a
herding
major.
so many people
That is,
together?
of course, a major concern. But as I remember, as I said earlier, also remember that social distancing would be maintained on board these ships. Traditionally, ships are a dicey case
Right.
when it comes to coronavirus. The classic case is that of the USS aircraft carrier Theodore Roosevelt,
right.
in which initially three sailors had tested positive for coronavirus, and in a matter of a month, over 800 of the sailors tested positive for coronavirus. But remember that on board these particular ships, there would be strict social distancing that would be maintained. There are certain elements more actually, that I want to mention, but it's actually part of the next story that I'm actually
So you'll have to wait for
planning
Sneh's
to
story
do
on
on
our
this as a
website
follow-up,
to know more
on
about it.
what's happening. So
Sure.
there are things that yet need to be confirmed, that are yet to be confirmed. But yes, but once that is done, I'm sure that your concerns are also been taken into consideration by the government, because you don't want a situation
Right.
where coronavirus, everybody
gets
coming
infected.
in gets
Right.
infected.
Hussein Mehmoon, India is very close to the Middle East, but what about other countries? I'm a student in Germany. Is there any plan for European countries? So, Snehesh, it's a concern that Indians across the globe who feel stranded at this point have, especially students perhaps. So is there a larger evacuation plan, or right now we're only talking about the Gulf countries?
See, as I said earlier, evacuation have taken place in the past also, but right now the airspace is completely closed down, so there is no flying that is taking place, except for those countries who are evacuating their citizens from India. But remember that once the airspace opens up, the air travel would again start happening. So, the Lufthansa will fly in, Air France would
Right.
fly in,
And
Air
people
India
can
would
choose to
fly
come
in.
on their own.
So people can actually choose to come on their own. But here in this case is the evacuation that has been planned of people who've lost their jobs. It's not the case of
People who choose to come back.
people who are choosing to come back, and it's not the case of just about 50 or 100 people who are
Right.
involved. It is estimated that there are thousands who will have to be brought back. And this could very well be one of the biggest evacuation that India would be carrying out since 1990, when India evacuated about
Right.
1,70,000 Indians from Kuwait following the war that broke out.
Right. Anilesh, will they be kept in quarantine once they return? How will we manage so many people in quarantine?
Well, Anilesh, this is something that was mentioned in my story yesterday also, that one of the issues that has been worked out is not just the logistics of getting these people, but it's also the quarantine process. So yes, this and hence discussions are ongoing with the state governments, but the Central Armed Police Forces and the other forces have also been roped in for this particular purpose. The Kerala government has been spoken to, so there would be a procedure that would be in place. And as I mentioned earlier, the evacuation is going to take place in phases. So it's not that thousands of people are going to suddenly come in to return to India.
Right. Nimish Artwani has a question. What about rehabilitation plans for Gulf returnees? So clearly people have lost their jobs here, and then they'll come and look for jobs here. How do you rehabilitate so many people? That's a big concern for the government.
Well, that is a question that is actually taking me completely off guard because yes, that would be a concern, but it's a concern. It's a concern. Job losses and the economy is a concern that
it's a bigger concern.
It's a bigger concern. So there's a larger concern to it, and people have lost their jobs. That's sad, but they're coming back to their country. And yeah.
Let me ask you another question that might take you off guard. This is from Karunakar Mohan Jha. What will happen to the Gulf economy if all the workers there are gone?
Well, see, as I said, most of these jobs are, in the oil sector, in the construction and other such activities, which will eventually pick up. So
people will go back.
These jobs, as the economy gets back to normalcy and as the oil production starts, construction activities start, these are the jobs that will be back in demand. So these workers would, there would be, opportunities that would open up for people to get jobs in these countries.
Right. So by when can we expect some clarity on the plan on, when the phase-wise evacuation is? I mean, by when can there be some finality on it?
Well, the only finality that there are only two finalities that, as far as this is concerned. One is that yes, an evacuation plan is being worked out by the Narendra Modi government. The second is that evacuation will take place only after
3rd of May.
The 3rd of May. More details are, as I said, the details. This is a gigantic exercise that has been carried out. There are logistics issues not only in terms of evacuating the citizens, but also in terms of putting them in quarantine. So there are larger logistics issues. The civil aviation industry, the civil aviation ministry, the Ministry of External Affairs, the Defence Ministry, the Prime Minister's office, the state governments are all working together on this particular element.
Right, also because once they are brought back, they'll have to be sent to their respective villages and districts as well. So that is going to be another exercise altogether.
Yeah. So there's a huge logistics issues that is there.
Right. Well, Snehesh, thank you so much for bringing us the story of how the government is planning this massive evacuation exercise to bring back Indians stuck in the Gulf countries. Thank you for watching Government Matters, for sending in your questions. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, to like our Facebook page and to follow us on Twitter.